Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, find the most important bits, and uncover those surprising facts that really turn data into actual understanding. Today, we're diving into something that might seem super specific at first glance, but I promise you it's got some fascinating clues about the global economy, where it's heading. Our mission today is to cut through the detail and get the main story from a report by Cognitive Market Research. Specifically, the global automotive oil filter market. Yeah, oil filters. We're going to look at sales revenue from 2021, see where it might go by 2025, and then look way out to 2033. Plus, we'll get into the compound annual growth rates, the KGRs for all the key parts. It sounds like such a tiny piece of the whole car world, doesn't it? An oil filter. But understanding this specific market actually tells a much, much bigger story about global economic shifts, vehicle fleets, those market dynamics that often just fly under the radar.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, thinking about these numbers, it isn't just about filters, not really. It's kind of a foundational lesson in market research in action. It shows how data that seems maybe a bit mundane can reveal some really significant, powerful trends about how our world's actually growing and changing.
Yeah.
When you look at it the right way, it's a unique window, you could say, into the mechanics of the global economy.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with the big picture, the global view. The overall automotive oil filter market is definitely robust. This report tells us that back in 2021, global sales revenue stood at nearly $4 billion. To be specific, $3,956.19 million. Looking ahead, it's expected to grow to almost $4.8 billion. That's $4,785 million by 2025. And then by 2033, the projection is almost $7 billion, comes in at $6,999.9 million. So that reflects an overall global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of about, 4.87%, called 4.9%.
Yeah, and what's important to grasp here, I think, is that the steady growth, it's not just about more new cars being sold. That's only part of it. It gives us a really crucial counter-narrative. Headlines often focus on EVs, the rapid adoption of electric vehicles, but the sheer scale of the existing global fleet of internal combustion engine vehicles, ICE vehicles, well, that ensures a really robust and, frankly, enduring aftermarket. This suggests a much longer tail for traditional parts like oil filters than maybe many people anticipate. It's kind of a quiet testament to the economic power and, importantly, the maintenance needs of the vehicles already on the road.
That's fascinating. So the old guard, the ICE vehicles, they aren't disappearing overnight. Not by a long shot based on this. Okay, moving from that big picture, let's drill down into some regions, starting with North America. Right, so this region generated roughly $791 million in revenue in 2021, and it's projected to reach over $1.4 billion, $1,427.98 million to be exact, by 2033. That's growing at a bit over 5% annually, a 5.064% CAGR. Within North America, the U.S. accounted for, $536.459 million in 2021, forecasted to reach almost $920 million, $919.619 million by 2033. That's a 4.6% CAGR, so slightly lower than the regional average. Canada's also seen pretty solid growth, moving from around $151 million in 2021, pointing to nearly $295 million by 2023. That's a healthier 5.72% CAGR. But here's where it gets really interesting for North America. Mexico, while it started from a smaller base, about $104 million, $103.652 million in 2021, it's projected to more than double to over $214 million by 2033. And this translates to the highest regional CAGR in North America, around 6.3%, 6.262% to be precise.
So when you see Mexico's growth outpacing the U.S. and Canada like that so significantly, what's your sort of initial take? What factors might be driving that?
That is a great question, and it really highlights the nuance you find within regions, doesn't it? Mexico's stronger growth. It's likely not just about, say, more new cars hitting the road there. It could also reflect a big increase in how much vehicles are used, maybe driven by, growing ride-sharing economies. That's a possibility. Or perhaps even a trend towards keeping older vehicles running for longer, maybe due to economic factors. See, both of those scenarios would push up filter demand more than just new car sales alone would suggest, because maintenance cycles get shorter or the total fleet expands even if new car sales aren't booming quite as much. It seems like a very dynamic market down there.
Right, that deeper look at Mexico really shows the stories hiding behind these numbers. Okay, let's pivot now to the real powerhouse of this market, Asia Pacific. This region is the clear leader. Market revenue was over $1.6 billion back in 2021, and it's projected to almost double to over $3 billion, $365.96 million by 2033. That shows a really robust 5.5% CAGR, 5.484%. What's really striking here is just the sheer scale and also the strong growth in some of the emerging economies like India and Southeast Asia. What does that tell us bigger picture?
Tells us quite a lot about global economic development. Absolutely. When we break it down, well, China is obviously a huge player. It goes from over $676 million in 2021 to over $1.3 billion to $1,324.49 million by 2033. That's a 5.7% CAGR. Strong. Then you have India showing incredibly strong growth from about $253 million, Porto over $512 million. That boasts a 6.1% CAGR, 6.051%. And Southeast Asia, well, it's an absolute tiger in this context, from roughly $134 million, Porto over $282 million. That's very strong, 6.4% CAGR, 6.377%. Japan, which is, a more mature market, is still growing steadily. From about $205 million, Porto over $346 million. That's at a 4.5% CAGR, 4.479%. So this clear indicator really of increased personal ability and economic development kind of hitting new gears in these really vibrant markets.
Incredible numbers coming out of Asia Pacific. Just huge scale and growth. Yeah. Okay, shifting over to Europe now. Here we see quite a diverse set of growth patterns, even within what you'd think of as a more mature market. Europe overall generated about $938 million, $937.616 million in 2021. Forecast to reach over $1.55 billion by 2033. That gives it a 4.3% CAGR overall, 4.294%. Digging into some specifics, Germany, a major auto hub, right? It's looking at a 3.9% CAGR, 3.877%, growing from about $212 million to over $334 million. The United Kingdom is around 3.5% CAGR, from $152 million to $232 million. France is slightly lower still, 3.2% CAGR, 3.175%, moving from around $130 million to $190 million. Russia, however, shows the lowest European CAGR in this report, just 2.4%, 2.393%, moving from around $48 million to about 66.3% actually, jumping from about $105 million to nearly $260 million. Denmark is also a notable performer in Europe, 5.4% CAGR, 5.435%, from nearly $50 million to over $93 million.
So what explains these, pretty varied growth rates across the continent?
Yeah, it's quite a spread, isn't it? These different rates within Europe, they're likely not random. They probably reflect different stages of market maturity across the continent. You have established economies like Germany, the UK, France. They already have very mature vehicle markets, highly saturated perhaps. So their growth, it's more about replacement filters, steady maintenance of the existing large car park. That higher growth in the rest of Europe category, well, that could indicate a kind of catch-up phase, maybe in vehicle ownership itself and the related aftermarket demand in countries that are bundled into that specific category. It just illustrates that even within a continent you might think of as broadly similar, there are significant underlying differences in market dynamics. Some areas are still experiencing quite rapid expansion.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, to round out our global tour, let's group the remaining regions, South America, the Middle East, and Africa, and let's look for any standout individual performances there. Okay, South America overall, projected for a 3.2% CAGR, 3.242%, growing from nearly $289 million, $288.80 to $2 million, so about $420 million, $419.994 million. Within that, Colombia stands out a bit, 4.6% CAGR, 4.555%, going from almost $39 million to over $65 million. Moving to the Middle East, the overall KGR there is 4.1%, 4.894%, with revenue rising from about $214 million to $343 million. And finally, Africa, looking at a 3.9% CGR overall, 3.937%, from about $111 million, $110.773 million, to almost $189 million, $188.997 million. South Africa is a key player there. It is a 4.2% CAGR, 4.235%, from around $47 million to about $84 million, $83.537 million.
So what does this all mean for these, quite diverse regions? I think these numbers, taken together, they paint a pretty clear picture. It's one of ongoing motorization and, crucially, continuous vehicle maintenance across all these continents, even in areas where the overall market size is smaller compared to, say, Asia-Pacific or Europe. The consistent demand for something basic, like an oil filter, whether it's in, a rapidly developing South American country or a wealthy Middle Eastern nation. It really highlights that the core need for functional vehicles is just universal. It's a fundamental indicator of economic activity, population growth too, especially as more people get access to personal transport and the infrastructure, roads and such, to support it.
Okay, so to sort of summarize our deep dive here, I think the most compelling takeaway from this whole report is that consistent, steady global growth. We're looking at a market, the automotive oil filter market, that's projected to grow by almost $3 billion in just over a decade. That's substantial. But the truly intriguing finding, maybe the biggest insight for me, is seeing those higher than average growth rates consistently in what we might call emerging markets, or rapidly developing economies, places like Mexico, India, Southeast Asia. These are the regions really punching above their weight, you could say, in terms of growth percentage for this seemingly small but clearly crucial component. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Can something as, well, mundane sounding as an oil filter market genuinely serve as a leading indicator for global economic health? Our deep dive today suggests, maybe surprisingly, yes.
It absolutely can, I think so. This whole dive into oil filters, it really isn't just about filters at the end of the day. It's like a microcosm, a small picture for understanding these profound global economic shifts, how infrastructure development is progressing around the world, how consumer behavior is evolving, especially within the broader auto industry. It powerfully demonstrates how even a really focused industry, one you might never normally think about, actually reflects much larger, more significant global trends. It's a kind of quiet barometer of change, precisely because it directly reflects vehicle use and the economic health of the households and businesses that need to maintain those vehicles.
Well, thank you for joining us on this pretty fascinating deep dive into the surprisingly revealing world of automotive oil filters.
Yeah, and as you go about your day, maybe consider this provocative thought. What other industries, maybe ones that seem mundane or often overlooked, might be hiding equally powerful insights into the global economy, into societal change? Think about maintenance markets specifically. Could they serve as these quiet but actually quite potent barometers of activity and growth in all sorts of sectors?
Something to think about. Keep an eye out for those hidden indicators in your own areas of interest. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.